by Bridget Riley and Victor Vasarely. I did that on purpose.
Hey everyone, it's Elliot.
And Todd. Welcome to Two Designers Walk Into a Bar, an ongoing conversation about pop culture and iconic design.
In our last episode, we talked about the origins of psychedelia and learned about Bicycle Day, celebrated every April.
Hint, it involved a lot of science and experimentation.
Along with maybe a little bit of balance.
Yeah, okay. So today, we dive into the era of peak psychedelia, the mid-1960s.
We talk about the design and music inspired by experimentation and how that informed pop culture for a generation.
So ask the bartender for some magic mushroom cocktails.
And join us as we trip our way back into the bar.
Yeah. Really doing it. Really doing it. Yeah. I mean, how shitty do you think magic mushroom cocktails must taste?
I don't know. That's like a real thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess tea, like all the different teas. Like there's all kinds of stuff you can make out of magic mushrooms. Maybe that's what makes them magic. Maybe it's their versatility and not their psychedelic.
Oh, well, then wouldn't it be flexibility mushrooms then?
Yoga mushroom.
Yoga. Contortionist mushrooms.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Anyway. All right, so here we are. We're in the mid-60s already with psychedelia. I know you can feel it.
Trust me, I've been feeling it for hours now.
All right, real quick.
What do you think, Todd? This is, my microdosing is my coping mechanism for when we get together to record.
Okay.
Were you
going to ask a question? I thought you were going to ask a question.
Why would I ask a question? I'm the one who just gave
said,
you
what do you
answer.
think? No, you said, what do you think?
Okay, what do you think?
I think you were going to ask a question.
Oh,
but anyway,
I see.
If you don't have a question.
You've derailed me now.
All right.
This is not getting off to a good start.
All right. The question I can tell that's on your lips and our listeners' lips and ears is, what happened in the last episode, Todd and Elliot?
Yes.
Well, just real quick, that was the first in our series on psychedelia. So we talked about how it kind of started coming together even as early as the 1930s with a guy named Albert Hofmann, known as the father of LSD. He invented the compound, and it sat aside for years, thinking it wasn't really useful. And it kind of grew in use once we got into the 1950s, and then we started coming along, and here we are.
And we can go ahead and, speaking of our cocktails, we can add magic mushrooms into the mix as those got to be more mainstream, right?
Should be okay.
Oh, yeah. One of the things I thought was the most interesting was all of the art inspired by this era and how things fed into and off of other things. So, like, for example, Aldous Huxley's novel, The Doors of Perception, and how that inspired the band name, The Doors, and, Jim Morrison being a poet. I could totally see him being absolutely fascinated by that, right? So, all in all, a seamless blend of, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, art and science, right?
Yeah, well said. So, we see all these things, as we've talked about in a number of our episodes, when we start tracing these threads of sort of pop culture movements, there's a time when they converge. And in psychedelia, it happened to be in the mid-60s. Obviously, the science of LSD had been around for a while. He talked about mushrooms were going more mainstream. But there were a couple things that happened. One thing, which I found interesting, is in 1966, California made LSD illegal. I mean, who knew, right? So, of course, the underground use really exploded after that. And it just really fed into the counterculture's ethos, the narrative of it's us against the man.
Right.
And, of course, the culture of San Francisco at the time. It was accepting of counterculture and sort of the youth movement. So you have the Human Being, which is in early 1967, January 14th at Golden Gate Park. So what, I mean, just out of the blue, what do you think the weather was like? Cold, foggy, windy, wet?
D, all of the above.
All of the above, yeah. But there was like 20,000 people that showed up for that. And so it's kind of a first big deal into the counterculture movement.
Yeah, Todd. I mean, we talked about this a little bit in our episodes on the Beats, if you recall, in the Beat movement, right? Obviously, one of the figureheads was our friend Timothy Leary and his famous phrase, turn on, tune in, drop out, right? So, you know, anti-media, anti-establishment, altered forms of reality. How you experience the world. So,
isn't that when he first said that phrase? Was that the Human Being?
It may have been. Yeah, probably. You know what? I don't remember. We'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was really sort of ground zero. I mean, obviously, he had a willing audience, shall we say?
Yeah, he could have said, "Eat McNuggets and fish sticks," and we'd be quoting it today probably still, because they'd be like trying to interpret it.
Yeah,
anyway.
He'd say, "The McRib is back." I don't know. So anyway, I mean, I think this phrase helped shape the entire hippie counterculture, right? So voicing these key ideas of 60s rebellion, and like we said, this was based on the attitude that the Beats had coming back from World War II and really being a little bit shell-shocked in terms of this return to normalcy on the heels of, you know, devastation in Asia and Europe, right? I understand why you had a lot of people who maybe thought chemistry might be a coping mechanism, right? So thinking about these ideas like experimenting with psychedelics, communal living, political decentralization, and really, you know, dropping out of society, taking all these traditional models and blowing them up.
Yeah. And, you know, if you happen to have been 18 in 1966, that would have had you being born in like 1948, I think, if I'm doing math correctly, which is the peak year, the peak baby boomer year. You're like the OG baby boomer. So you had this volume of people that were not their parents and did not participate in their parents' war. But anyway, you mentioned about dropping out of society and sort of all the aesthetic that went along with communal living and political decentralization. And that's, you know, pop culture followed those same ideas. The design of the Human Being poster was done by a guy whose work we are fans of, Stanley Mouse. And it's a good example. It carries all the influences of psychedelia. Of course, check out our website so you can see that, which in itself, let me give you a 20-second art nerd background.
Only Elliot. 20 seconds? Okay.
Well, I'm going to try to do a timer here. So psychedelia was inspired by a lot of different things, obviously, but the artists and the designers pulled from the Art Nouveau movement, which was a European and international art style that flourished in like 1880s to the 1914s. And it was characterized by these just very distinctive flowing lines that mimic nature, and led by a guy whose name is probably pretty common because you probably have placemats with his art on it, Alphonse Mucha. So that influence kind of mimic the organic visuals that you might find on an acid trip. So the designers were like, oh, flowing lines and flowing type. And, you know, it was just, it managed to be illegible, basically, which was sort of the rite of passage. It like, can you read this or are you not cool?
You know, there were also other things, right? This was, in my opinion, design-wise, this is sort of the golden era of the paste-up, right?
Yeah.
Think about things like, you know, zipatone film and patterns. And then if you think about things getting printed, especially screen printed, a lot of the posters at this time were screen printed.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons, of course, was because it could allow for these bolder colors, these fluorescent inks or these overprints of inks, you know, one, you know, layered on top of the other and getting these funky patterns going and things like that.
Yeah.
So ended up having this additional trippiness to it, I guess. You know, there were like these happy accidents happening, whether it's with these hard geometric patterns or these more sinuous nature-based patterns that you mentioned, or tossing them all together and sort of seeing what happened, right?
Right. Well, a designer, Wes Wilson, who's known as the father of psychedelic posters, he admitted he had stumbled upon Art Nouveau books, and particularly Alphonse Mucha's work. His posters are very well known. And he basically just sort of ripped it off and repurposed the same style for rock shows. But, when you filter Art Nouveau through an acid trip, you get sort of melting letters and blobs of letters. So,
right.
It was really one of those things like the rock poster. If you were cool enough or high enough to read the poster, then you were cool enough to attend the be-in or the happening, or whatever the show was at the time.
Well, it's funny. I never thought about this till just now, but I bet part of the Art Nouveau aesthetic was probably inspired by opium. I mean, that was the height of opium use.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
probably.
Think about
we haven't even talked about marijuana. That was probably the least.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah, I've heard that was a thing.
I don't think we can add anything to that conversation, but I'm sure it was certainly around at the time, don't you think?
Yeah, probably. I have it on good authority, yeah.
I don't know if it made the walls melt or if it, made like rabbits come out of stuff like LSD. Are you paying attention to me?
Yeah, why?
Because you're staring intensely off into the distance.
Oh, well, as you're talking about be-ins, I'm thinking about when a fresh round will be in my glass.
Huh, I get it. I'll continue to be in debt because of you, man. We'll be back to talk about the summer of love.
Summer, winter, hey, look, no matter the season, I love it when you pick up the tab.
Great. We'll be right back. Hi. We want to take a moment to mention that if you're enjoying this episode, we have an archive of topics ranging from the Olympics to movie posters.
Think Ghostbusters.
Iconic images.
Think Bigfoot.
Punk music.
The Ramones.
Saturday morning cartoons.
The Pink Panther.
And failed products like OK Soda. Visit our website at twodesignerswalkintoabar.com for full episode notes and visuals, the latest blog content, and to sign up for our newsletter.
Follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Find the links on our website or search using the phrase "Two Designers Walk Into a Bar."
Most importantly, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps more people like you find podcasts like this.
And tell a friend about us. Send them a link to our podcast from your listening platform of choice.
And if you're inclined, buy our merchandise. Stickers, coasters, magnets, t-shirts. We're designers. We make good stuff, and it helps support the show.
Get in touch. Use the contact form on our website or send an email to hello@twodesignerswalkintoabar.com.
We read every message we get. Honest.
And we're available for speaking gigs. Email us to learn more.
Okay, now back to the bar.
Todd, as we advised all of our listeners, we'll see how many followed our advice if they're still listening now, if they turned on, tuned in, and dropped out, right?
Yeah. I don't think we were being traditional, so maybe they won't reject it.
They just turned off. But really sort of blowing up anything traditional, right? Anything rigid, all these post-World War II paradigms. And the human being was sort of this siren song that really got the world's attention. Like it brought all of these activities again into the mainstream. Brought Timothy Leary into the mainstream.
Yeah,
mushrooms, acid, psychedelia into
the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, this was suddenly whatever in Life magazine, Look magazine, Saturday Evening Post, on the radio. It was in people's living rooms, right?
Yeah,
it was becoming a national thing. Okay, so let's talk about the Summer of Love a little bit more. So we hinted at this. San Francisco, specifically Haight-Ashbury, which is the tippy tip of Golden Gate Park.
Mm-hmm.
That was where more than 100,000 hippies, flower children, and counterculture figures gathered, and my guess is there was probably a lot of jazz cabbage and one bar of soap. That's probably the one. It probably wasn't even a full bar. It was some bar of soap that was accidentally left in someone's backpack.
Well, as a matter of fact, Hunter S. Thompson happened to call the district Haight-Ashbury. Kind of telling, right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that he was hanging around there. Super descriptive, right?
Yeah.
He's a wordsmith, so a convenient portmanteau.
Yeah.
So this crowd of 100K, they came and they were united by this idea of a spiritual awakening through the use of some hallucinogenic drugs, right?
Yeah. I think those two are connected.
Yeah, and I think Hunter S. Thompson being in the middle of that's no surprise. But, also connecting them, as we talked about, was this just anti-war sentiment. So we talked about the rigid constructs, these social constructs that happened post-World War II.
Yeah.
Well, lo and behold, Todd, what was happening in the late 60s?
I think there was another war.
Yeah, someplace in Asia.
Oh, yeah.
And so let's just say trust of the government was not in an all-time high when it came to young people. Speaking of all-time highs.
Yeah. I think distrust of government and young people are also connected.
Yes.
But I think we can say the psychedelia movement was fueled by young people rejecting their parents' values, as we've said. Rejecting suburban living. Remember the people back from the war, they moved out from the cities.
Yeah.
They were getting more space. They were making those tiki bars, which we had talked about in some previous episodes. So go back and listen to those if you want to know about tiki culture.
Yeah, so they shouldn't have rejected everything, I guess.
Yeah, well.
And in general, Todd, of course, they were rejecting this sort of conformist and materialistic mindset and these values of modern life. And again, glommed onto this alternate movement, this psychedelic movement, right? Very eclectic, much more freeform. And as we were talking about, that's, of course, reflected in pop culture, right?
Yeah.
Visual art, design, music. I mean, you name it, light shows, right? I mean, there's plenty of information about this time period.
Yeah, I think, if you were going to describe the word psychedelia without using the word psychedelia, you would say it was an eclectic mixture of stuff in pop culture. So eclectic is the key word there. And it was kind of what if, or what would anything go? Because if you think about it, we were starting to hear more music, and particularly popular music that used unusual instruments. And we saw the same kind of unusual techniques happening in design. You mentioned already about letraset and film and, photo manipulation. But, in music, I mean, probably the Indian sitar wasn't a gigantic instrument until we get to the mid-60s. So
I'll say that. Yeah, I'll agree with that.
So music and art and design is this odd mixture of 19th century Art Nouveau. We've talked about this revival of that optical art, underground comics. And of course, the West Coast had culture coming into this time. So there was this attitude that went along with it. And, how did you know? Like if somebody was cool or not? Well, psychedelic fashion. Think tie-dye. Think paisley. Day-glow was invented around this time. And that wasn't just an aesthetic. It was a practical party favor, man. Like under black light, clothes would light up and, posters would light up, painting on the walls would light up. And it was all enhanced by the LSD experience. So again, whatever you were wearing meant you were turned on. You were enlightened.
Right. Turned on literally.
And
I think this gets into this, we're talking Art Nouveau, and on the heels of that, if we're thinking about art history for a minute, surrealism and Dada, right? So the 20s through the 40s, the 1920s through the 40s. So really sort of like between the wars, right?
Yeah,
that definitely had an influence with this dreamlike imagery. And of course, think about Salvador Dali and his stretched and melting forms, whether that's clocks or animals.
The persistence of time.
Yeah. I mean, he was tripping before the world knew what tripping was. Like, that was just sort of how he was living his life.
Yeah. He wasn't on anything but just life. He was on Dali.
Okay, hey, here's a trivia question for you, as long as we're talking about Salvador Dali.
Okay.
Total aside.
Okay.
What candy company did he design the logo for?
Oh, I do know it. I know it. Oh, I can draw the logo. What is it? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
That's a good hint.
It's a good place for a candy company. I know what it is. It's a 4-letter word, right? Tell me what the word starts with.
C.
C?
C.
Okay, that wasn't one of my choices. I know what it is.
I have 25 other letters I was thinking about.
All right. No, pick a different letter for it to start with. All right. No, tell me what it is.
Chupa Chups.
Chupa Chups. Yeah, I know. It's like a yellow wrapper with red type.
Yeah, the
it's
red
kind of,
sort of
it's on an angle.
Burst. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on an angle. Isn't that funny that he did that?
Chupa Chups.
You know, I should have known that. Anyway, where were we? We were talking about other influences, weren't we? And in addition to wild colors and things that we were talking about with this aesthetic, op art, the beat aesthetic, they're doing research on this optical art and sort of the illusions and images that it casts. It was done by 2 scientists named Bridget Riley and Victor Vasarely. And you've seen these, right? They're black and white patterns, and they appear like hallucinations. Sorry. And they appear like I'm having an hallucination.
Yeah, bartender, like I'll have what Todd's having.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I think it goes without saying, right? It's really this hodgepodge of styles mixed together and fueled by hallucinogens. So anything goes as long as it's melting and clashing colors.
Sounds like your wardrobe.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, but what about what I consider to be, at least in my mind's eye, clothes, I would say, are a solid number 2, or maybe music is a very good solid number 2. But to me, sort of the ultimate, when I think of psychedelic expression visually, concert posters. Can we talk about this? No, I don't know if you remember this or not, but this is a design podcast, so let's talk about some posters.
Oh, we got to talk about that sometime. Okay.
Yeah, eventually.
Well, you're right. And so, concert promoters like Chet Helms and Bill Graham.
Fillmore.
They needed to, the Fillmore, and Avalon Ballroom. They needed to introduce these bands. So they were hiring up-and-coming artists out of necessity and out of economics, right? So there was this sort of burgeoning scene that was happening. And they're sort of known as the Big 5 psychedelic poster artists, but I make them like sort of the Big 5.5 to 6. So Wes Wilson.
Did one person need to go on a diet?
No, it's like maybe the influence is not quite as strong.
Oh, I see.
Anyway.
Okay.
But so I mentioned Wes Wilson, who did the warp lettering, like it was melting. A guy whose work I think we both really like, Victor Moscoso, who was the first to really apply color theory to these vibrating colors. Like he was playing around with complementary colors. So for the non-designers listening, that's colors that are the most intense together. They vibrate. They actually hurt your eyes. And you've heard us talk about...
Yeah, it's hard for your eyes to fix on like a foreground and a background because it can't visually sort out what it should be focusing on.
Yeah, your brain is reading each one equally.
Yeah, it's sort of jittering or glitching out.
Yeah. So, we talked about at one time, we mentioned Joseph Albers at the Black Mountain School. Mm-hmm. So... Moscoso was actually a student of his at Yale. So that whole like interaction of color that Albers was into was his psychedelic how-to manual. And sort of last, but certainly not least, were the underground comic book illustrators. They were sort of the comic surrealists, like Rick Griffin, you know that name, R. Crumb, Robert Crumb. Mm-hmm. They had these, bizarre characters and sort of this countercultural satire. And a word that we've used before, completely untethered,
Yeah, untethered. And it's funny because, R. Crumb, for example, some of his stuff was in color, but a majority of it, when I think of his work, it was in black and white, and it was the subject matter that was really untethered, right?
Yeah.
But they all had these sort of great alternate hot takes on what normalcy should be or what polite society was. And these guys had to, in some way, shape, or form. I feel like they were rolling with the crew from Mad Magazine, right? Like they were
had to be,
swimming in the same water as those people. I mean, there's just such a shared sensibility, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the scene grew. Stanley Mouse, Alton Kelley, like names that became very popular and really experimented sort of with that blend of art and design. They sort of fused found imagery and like bizarre sort of psychedelic twists and stuff that went along with that.
Yeah, and I think most people probably would have first been exposed to psychedelia through two gigantic events. You know, if they weren't one of the 100,000 folks in Golden Gate Park freezing their nuts off in January, right? So the first one would have been the release of the Beatles album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So that was right around that same time period, June of 1967. And it really sort of became this landmark psychedelic album, right? I mean, as I'm saying it, Todd, can't you imagine the artwork in your head?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So the Peter Blake and Jan Hayworth artwork, that collage. You know, McCartney insisted on including these bizarre figures like Aleister Crowley, Karl Marx, Lewis Carroll, right? So people who are not known for their straight-laced sensibility. So there's a lot of,
you're right.
Yeah, a lot of hidden messaging in there, which I think is great.
Yeah.
I also think it's funny that it was Paul McCartney and not John Lennon who was asking for this stuff, right?
John Lennon wanted Hitler, but
I think they poo-pooed that. I think it's
and Jesus.
Yeah.
But, you know, okay, so I mean, that was a gigantic pop culture ripple in the fabric.
Yeah.
You know, that was huge. You said they were two.
Yeah. Well, Todd, have you ever heard of a little music festival that happened in upstate New York called Woodstock?
Celebrate that little yellow bird? They have a music festival for the little yellow bird.
They did. Isn't that sweet?
That's nice.
It is. Yeah, Snoopy was there and everything.
Nice.
So, you know, psychedelia peaks with 500,000 people. So take that, Golden Gate Park. You know, human being times 5.
Yeah.
Probably fewer bathrooms.
Probably.
Gathering for peace, love, music, and the brown acid, Todd. Can we?
I heard it wasn't good.
Yeah. So the festival, you know, was so awash in psychedelics that the Hog Farm commune set up a quote-unquote bad trip tent. And it was staffed with medics and volunteers to calm people down. So I guess in a weird way, think about today this concept of like whatever it is, like the safe dose facilities, or like these people who are your sort of psychedelic guides when you're taking certain types of drugs. I think maybe Woodstock sort of accidentally slipped and fell in that in the 60s.
I think you're right.
Just to, I think, avoid any mishaps, shall we say, right?
Yeah. So we're on the edge of the 70s with Woodstock, and I think if there were ever a movement associated with a decade, it has to be psychedelia and the 60s. And, you know, there's actually a really logical reason we're still talking about it today. Obviously, the effect on pop culture changed the world, the Beatles alone. But it defined the first generation of baby boomers, like I mentioned. It was this mass of 18-year-olds, the peak birth rate of 18-year-olds rejecting 50s values and learning to be independent adults and speak a different language, wear different clothes, like all these things that teenagers do. And, you know, we figured that with a group that size, there had to be immense buying power, right? So if you wanted to get their attention, I mean, I know they're not known for like crazy spending, but of course it's a mass of people, but you had to use barely legible type and clashing colors and just weird swirls. And that was a beacon. But interestingly enough, in our next episode, we're going to talk about the extension of psychedelia deeper in the mainstream and, you know, probably some funny mistakes that advertisers made while they were trying to take notice of this movement and be cool. So more about that in the next episode.
Yeah, that's always how interesting things start to die, right?
As soon as
Madison Avenue, you know, when it goes from like the people in the ad shop to it being in the ads themselves. That's usually like the flare going up saying, like, hey, this is about to be over. Yeah, move on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, boy. This sounds like a recipe to start the fall of the psychedelic movement, I think. And you know what, Todd? Speaking of recipes, I'm thinking it's about time for another cocktail.
Oh, well, what do you suggest?
I'm not picky. A Manhattan, Blue Hawaii, Whiskey Sour, Grasshopper, maybe a Singapore Sling.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of buying power, look, I'm backing up. Don't let me stand in your way. I mean that literally. I'll step aside and you head to the bar. So, thank you, my friend.
Yeah, okay. Well, I might need to fight the power, my friend.
Oh. Is Fight the Power the name of a new cocktail I'm unaware of?
Oh, boy. See you next time.